And I think we should be live by now. Let me just check on YouTube, but I believe so actually. Yes, we are live. Hello and welcome to yet another episode on this channel. Hello and welcome to the Friends Validator YouTube channel. And today I have the great pleasure to welcome once again Lex Avelino from Passage and the Strangeclan to the show. Hey Lex, it has been a while, but how are you doing?
Oh, doing great, brother. It's my pleasure. Always excited to be with you guys, and super excited to see people yapping it up in the chat. It is funny because it shows the roots of Passage in the Strange Clan community. But I'm stoked to be here today and just to talk about the Passage chain and what's coming up.
Yeah, maybe you could elaborate really quickly. So, what is this hashtag all about?
Oh yeah, Yop. I mean, Yop is basically um, kind of the rallying cry for Strange Clan. It's become kind of a cultural phenomenon within the Strangeclan community. It has roots back to Walt Whitman's Song of Myself, classic literature. But ultimately, it's just a fun sound, barbaric yop from the clan, the Strange Clan. Um, Affirmative, excitement. It expresses all of these things and many more.
Nice. And yes, today is a very, very, very important day for Passage, so to say, because today was the launch day. And what I heard so far was it was the smoothest launch ever. So, could you give us some leaks, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. So for one, we have an incredible crew of validators. We were super excited. I got to talk with. I got to just kind of see some of the chat going on, and sounds like we reached consensus in record time. Seconds. Things moved really smoothly. Everybody's having a good experience, and for us, I think a big part of that's just we have a great set of validators. We've got a great blockchain team, and pretty good at just the whole communication thing, right? We're listening to the validators. We want to do things like setting up. We do weekly GM tidings. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have a live chat in our Discord. We're going to start featuring some of those validators who are currently validating the Passage chain, which is currently at height of 2,282 blocks. So we're making some waves here. And get people in and just communicate, right? Because for us, we're a very involved team. We're very involved with the community, and for us, we want to make sure that we always have that touch point. So I think that's a big part of what has enabled the validators to really shine. It's just we're here for them, support what they're doing, and just super grateful for all the incredible people who have contributed thus far.
100%, totally agree with that. But now I believe so. When we had you on the show for the very first time, we primarily talked about the Strange Clan, and many people may be new to Cosmos, maybe heard about your project today for the very first time. So, what is Passage? What is the Strange Clan? Where's the correlation here? So, maybe we can clarify some terms here before we dive deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. So Passage is the it's the metaverse for the mainstream. We're building connections. In a sense, it's a world building platform where you can make a metaverse, right? We're relying on Cosmos, IBC, the interconnectedness, right, to create an ecosystem where people can launch these virtual worlds that are all connected, right? A world can be anything from an event platform, it can be a game, it can be a social network, it can be someplace for content creators to connect with their communities. It's all about connection. And when you go into these worlds, you go to an event, you make a friend, all those assets, for one, they belong to you because it's Web3, and two, they move across all the other worlds. So infinitely compatible. So there is no more Facebook, there is no more Discord. It's just I have my friends and they're in my wallet, right? And when I go to Discord, I have the same friend as when I go to Facebook. That is the Passage metaverse in a nutshell. Now, to dive down deeper, we've built some incredible tools that allow people to create these really exciting immersion and accessibility, right? So one of the tools we're leveraging is Unreal Engine. But the problem with that is to have a rich virtual experience in these worlds, for it to be immersive and realistic, to get a good range of styles where you're not limited to Minecraft. Minecraft is an option, but you can also go, super realistic, do something more professional or something more immersive. Unreal Engine is perfect for that. It gives you a huge range, have the best possible potential. But Unreal Engine games are heavy, right? You have to download the game. You have to have a computer that can run it. So what Passage does, as part of our tools that we're giving to world builders, you can create a world, a game, event, whatever, that you're delivering to your community where they don't need to download anything. They can actually stream the experience using Passage, and it means no downloads. They can access it from a browser on any device, whether it's your phone or a desktop or a laptop, iPad, whatever. The goal is being able to make sure, again, it's connection. It's connecting creators and builders to the tools to make these experiences, and then making sure that what they create helps them connect to their community, to their audience, to whoever it is who's going to participate in that world. So that's Passage in a nutshell. Strangeclan is kind of one of the premier worlds on Passage that we're building to show people what's possible, specifically in the game space with Strangeclan.
I see. Yeah, I think that's a very good explanation. We will also dive deeper into Strangeclan in a second, but just that we understand this right. So basically, the idea of putting all of this on a blockchain is essentially that we keep it decentralized and that we can interconnect everything via IBC. But at the end of the day, where is all the data being stored? Is this something that the validators are handling with their service, or I mean, the data has to be stored somewhere. So where would this be?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it depends what we're talking about. So, in terms of big picture storage, we have a lot of options in terms of the infrastructure for everything from IPFS to file based, right? Like, there's a huge opportunity for, especially looking around some of the applications that are operating around Akash. Akash is decentralized compute. There are a bunch of tangential opportunities for decentralized storage. So there's a lot of ways we can do that. And ideally on our side, that ends up being up to the user as to where they want to store, parts of the experience, assets for the experience. What the Passage chain ends up doing is being the central reference point for those things, right? So that you can build a world and you can use any chain you want. People can pay in Chihuahua tokens, they can pay in Atom tokens. Right now, you can pay for NFTs on the Passage marketplace in Atom, but the goal is it's not just Atom, but people can request any token, people can pay any token, because we live in IBC world. There's no reason you should be confined to paying in one token when all of that swapping can happen on the back end using IBC. And the liquidity offered by protocols like Osmosis. So the goal there is that you can implement any chain for gating for your experience, for payments, for things within the experience, ticketing or assets or whatever. More importantly than that, we're incorporating fiat on-ramps so you don't have to worry about tokens. If you don't know about tokens, if you don't know what Web3 is, you can still attend an event in Passage. That's the number one goal for us, because this is not the metaverse for Cosmos. This is not the metaverse for crypto. This is the metaverse for the mainstream, for everybody. Because for us, this is about being able to open up this decentralized opportunity to anybody who wants to participate, even if they don't entirely understand it, right? Just being able to open up it. We should assume ownership by default, even for people who don't know they want it, right? And so you can pay in any currency, including fiat on-ramps. But Passage is behind all of those things, right? So for instance, when you're the relationships that you might have, anything that needs to travel world to world, like your relationships, assets around your identity, right? Your reputation and things like that, that information needs to be on-chain to some degree, right? Now we're also looking for speccing out the privacy implementation of that, because you don't want your email on-chain. But you may want to give, let's say you have Cryptocito World, right? And for those who don't know, and if you don't know, shame on you, who Cryptocito is. He is one of our favorite content creators in the Cosmos space, and close friends with the FRENS Validator in creating Cosmoverse, the event that we're all excited for. But let's say, you go to a world and you can actually hang out with him live during a live stream, right? Or as the live audience, whatever. So you click in, no downloads, you're in this virtual world, you're watching from the audience area as he's talking with a guest, whatever, you see it happening in front of you. Really exciting, also being broadcast to YouTube. Super cool. Maybe he gates access with an NFT, but you're talking to somebody in the stands like, oh yeah, like I really love what he said about, and you make them your friend, right? Or you add people there. All of that needs to translate into another space. Your friendship needs to translate. That person you met, you need to be able to see in like a hub somewhere, like, oh, they're in this other world right now doing this thing. Everything needs to be connected. And then you need to be able to say in the middle of that stream, oh, I really like this CryptoCito dude. Like, I'm going to subscribe to him. And that allows him to use your email, right? So like that would give him permission in the protocol to send you emails about upcoming streams, about whatever, maybe push notifications of some kind, by leveraging the information that's encrypted on chain, right? But without exposing it. You're not giving him your email, you're giving access to contact you. That's what passage chain would be the passage chain would be doing, right? It is the unifying thread across all these experiences, and the experiences themselves can leverage any other chain. Passage is kind of meant in a way to be invisible, right? To really give the limelight to creators, builders, and the community.
I see. That's super, super interesting. So basically, Passage is not just a blockchain where people can just program games on it and that's the end of the story. It's more about providing a backend that we can have all kinds of virtual interactions in a very safe way, so to say.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
That's super cool. And I mean, the possibilities here are endless. And may I ask, so how easy would it be for like a noob, so to say, to set up an own world? So how much effort would be required? How hard would it be to, I mean, we all know that you could program some things here and there, but how hard would it be to really build a very nice virtual world with Passage, with a nice UX? How realistic is this for a normal person to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when the platform is live, it should be effortless. I mean, if you can build a site on WordPress, I mean, there is a sense in which we're calling this WordPress for the metaverse, right? It's like Webflow, it's like Shopify, right? Um, the idea is that as a creator, you should be able to do two things, right? If I'm a builder, if I have a team, I'm trying to create a space for a community experience, you've got two options. You have a dev team that's using the SDK, the Passage SDK, to integrate with their application, right? They've already built something out in Unreal Engine, or they're using an open source engine like Godot, and they can plug in the functionality they need from Passage into their world, right? They can make sure that they are minting NFTs that are compatible with the Passage marketplace, so that their 3D assets can be traded across different chains, things like that, right? You can implement it at the development level. At the same time, we're going to have a user interface where world builders can go in and say, they can pick from 3 templates, right? They can start with like, hey, you can go in advanced customization mode and access all the drop downs and drag and drop settings possible. Or here are some templates you can start with, right? Game, office, event, community, those types of things, right? And I say, well, I'm looking for a collaboration space for my team. You know, we've got a decentralized team. We're all across the world, and we want a good place to kind of communicate and do some collaboration, right? Have a whiteboard up on the wall that we're all kind of contributing to. We can see each other in a 3D space. We can put some music on, like whatever. Like this is a collaborative space. So they click Office, right? Here are some basic Office templates, right? Like how many rooms do you need, right? Like being able to really get down to that level where it's like just it's drag and drop, right? In some ways, the idea is that this is like Sims. This is like very accessible. And again, we're starting with Unreal Engine because the huge ecosystem around Unreal Engine. There's tons of content. There's tons of assets. There's tons of developers. So using Unreal Engine as the center point in the beginning gives us the opportunity to leverage Unreal Engine tools, Unreal Engine customizers, right? There will never be one set of tools that you use to build a Passage world. The tools themselves will have the opportunity will be modular, right? Where somebody could say, hey, I just created this new customizer, right? And they put it on the Passage marketplace. So you could either use it for free or buy a different customizer, right? Like that level of modularity where you get to switch out all the pieces. And ideally, there's a really simple flow for kind of like your basic users who are just trying to build something, but also sequentially more advanced options for people who are ready to dig in deeper or actually have development knowledge.
So just to imagine this like in a very good example. So let's say we from Cosmoverse, we would like to do an upcoming conference in the Metaverse.
Yep.
We could just set up our conference in the Metaverse, and then we could post a link on Twitter, and then everybody would be able to join the conference with one mouse click.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the beauty of it. You can build the cost of streaming into the ticket, right? For events, the format for this is so simple, because any potential cost, like, let's say you want to have two tracks, right? I think Cosmoverse is a perfect example because you've got a physical ticket and a digital ticket, right? Physical ticket, $30, whatever, whatever they're charging for the physical event. Early bird, 30, $100, whatever. But then for the virtual ticket, it could be a cheaper price, right? So more accessible, and also the fact that you don't have to fly across the country potentially. And those people, and whatever the cost of that is basically covering any of the streaming costs that it would take for you to host it, right? To host that Passage World. And so basically what people can do is not only can they access it in one click, right? But for those who are part of the Cosmos community that may have been involved in Strangeclan, they'll have customizations for their presence there, for their avatar, coming from that world, right? So if I own a Strangeclan character, I could show up as the Strangeclan character. I could show up as my Chihuahua from the Chihuahua Passage World, or whatever that may be, right? Again, when you create a Passage World, you're not just tapping into the infrastructure and the tools to make that world. You're tapping into the resources of every other Passage World, because now you're not talking about you're tapping into a network, right? A history of people engaging in other worlds, and people are already incentivized to be hanging out in Passage because that's where they're doing their gaming, that's where they're doing their office collaboration. They're attending your event there, and they're attending events like Decentralized, this big EDM festival we have next year. Attending events like, we got a huge hip hop martial arts event happening next year with RZA from Wu-Tang Clan, like big stuff happening. And so they're within the whole universe of Passage, they're accruing assets and they're accruing relationships, right? They might have buddies who they're playing Strangeclan with that they don't know personally, but they end up at the conference, and you get 100 other people to buy conference tickets because they see their friends there, right? Because the key is people are already doing things in Passage. You should benefit because stuff is already happening here.
That's so insane to think about that. And
Yeah.
let's stick to this example, Cosmoverse. So of course, because I want to visualize this in a very realistic way. So when I enter the Cosmoverse venue, I walk down the stairs, I arrive in the conference venue hall, etc. How do I have this realistic visualization in the metaverse? So can I like move forward with like I don't know, like with tooling on my phone, or how can I move forward in the metaverse? So how is it done?
Great question. So setting the world up is like setting up a Discord. You can set up different roles. So let's say you're a speaker, right? You may have access to areas. If you, as the world builder, designate somebody as a speaker, they can have access to areas that non-speakers don't have access to, right? You can navigate around on your phone just using touch controls, just click and drag and navigate. You could do it kind of like a two-screen approach. So that's a great question when you're talking about a speaker, because this is one of the things we've thought through. How does the speaker move around, right? Could they have an assistant moving their character around for them on their phone while they're talking, right? Could they, like, you know what I mean? Because if you're talking to an audience, it helps to be able to see people. Well, this is the beauty of speaking to a Passage virtual audience. If we were doing this show in a Passage virtual audience, I would see Stefan and Punzi out there in the audience. I can see them in the chat now, jumping up and down, right? Like you could see their video feed or their avatar on their video feed. You might see them as their Strangeclan character jumping up and down, waving their hands. And in designated areas, people wouldn't be able to talk because this is where the stage is. This is where things are happening, and you want to make sure that the speakers can be heard for everyone and things like that. But they can do emotes. They can do, like, you can actually get this personal sense of like how people are responding to what you're saying that you don't get in a lot of other virtual settings. Like, if you get this a little bit with the emojis in chat, but you don't get the animation, you don't get the life and the breath of the interaction with the audience. Being able to see all those people in front of you, like responding to what you're saying, whether it's like by doing some type of dancing emote or like dropping emojis in the air or things like that, you really get this connection with the audience. And basically people can control it however they want to. It's going to be, we get to tap into all the presets that exist within Unreal Engine. People are going to be able to control their characters via simple touch controls. You can use keyboard and mouse. You can plug in a controller or connect a Bluetooth controller and use a game controller. You can put on a VR headset. Very quickly after we launch, we're going to support VR for these experiences because we want people to have that option, right? We don't see that as like the main way that people use Passage because it's a pretty small percentage of people who have invested in the hardware to run VR applications. But that said, it needs to be an option because people need to be able to access this from every level. And you've got people hanging out all using different devices, right? Punzi might be over here on his phone, just navigating around and pressing buttons to emote and whatnot. But somebody else might have a full body avatar with hand presence because they're in a VR headset. And they can all be in the same world interacting together. And the streaming helps with that because it levels the playing field, right? People can use whatever device is accessible and helpful for them. But if they have epic hardware, then they can also go ham.
Yeah, but I think that this will also change in the future. I think that more and more people will have these VR goggles. And with all of this in mind, I mean, still the Metaverse and also your project is still in a very early stage. So right now you provide these templates, but if we have a look at the history of the gaming industry, also the graphics in the gaming industry improved significantly. If you just compare the first GTA to the recent one, there's like a huge difference. So how do you imagine how this will evolve? Because I've been to some metaverses here and there. I've seen some NFT games, but the graphic was okay. It was a nice try, but I would not have played it if there was no financial incentive, so to say. So what's with the graphics?
Well, and the beauty of this is in Unreal Engine, any level of graphics is possible. I mean, if you look up Punzi can help me drop some links to Blockhouse is one of the event spaces that we're building right now for Passage. It's where we are going to be hosting kind of our curated events, and the graphics are just beautiful. Running in Unreal Engine 5, and again, this is streaming to users, so there's no there's no hardware requirement for it, right? There's no downloads. There's nothing. You just click the link and you're in, and you get access to these super realistic graphics. On the other hand, Strangeclan is a little bit stylized, right? It's a fun open world. The lighting is really nice. There's a lot of like really incredible depth to the world that we're creating. But the characters are stylized. The world is stylized. It's got a Breath of the Wild kind of feel. And it really gives us the opportunity to give people a range of expression. And in terms of how this evolves long-term, what's so beautiful about this is that Passage is not reliant on any particular engine or any particular style of content. We're creating the format. We're creating the highways by which people connect these things. It's not even the highway. It's the standard. It's the tools to create the highway, right? And people will be able to. What I'm really excited to see is the economy that builds around Passage, right? Because imagine you have 1,000, 10,000 really hungry creators from all sorts of different ecosystems, because this isn't exclusive to Cosmos, right? We're built on Cosmos. Passage is built on Cosmos. But the beauty of Cosmos is we connect to everything, right? I mean, we've got bridges coming from Ethereum. We've got cross-chain compatibility coming all across the board. And there's a lot of big things that are building in that regard. And so we set down roots here because everywhere else is coming to here, right? And so as these people come in the door and they're wanting to build on Passage, you're going to have a huge demand. People start building 10,000 worlds. And let's say only 1% of these people have a 3D team that can make all their assets for them, right? So you only have a certain number. There's a big demand for worlds, but the assets in the marketplace in the beginning, we're going to be contributing a ton of stuff as a Passage team to give people like building blocks, everything from event centers to outdoor environments to like shrubs and plants and desks and like all these things to fill your world for different use cases. But there's only so much we can create. And you're going to see a lot of worlds that end up looking the same in the beginning because only a few people could actually do the legwork to build custom assets. So there's going to be a huge demand for third-party, a huge freelancer network that builds around Passage, where you're creating 3D models and putting them on the marketplace to make money, right? And so that becomes a whole revenue stream for 3D creators that doesn't exist right now. Because, for instance, the creators that are building for games like Unreal Engine, or for ecosystems like Unreal Engine, for CGI and things like that, the only place they can sell their assets, the only people they can sell their assets to are other 3D creators, because nobody else knows how to use them. But if Passage offers them a plug-and-play system where you can sell your 3D assets to anyone and they can drag and drop it into their world with no technical experience necessary, we've opened up a huge market of people who want that, who want the opportunity to have something that's more custom, something that's more unique to them, and an opportunity for people who want to create that and need a way to make money from anywhere in the world, right? Just by contributing 3D assets, this digital information, this digital art. So there's a huge economy that can build around that, and that will evolve as graphics evolve, as the technology evolves. You'll have people contributing higher and higher quality assets as the capabilities of the engines that are plugged into Passage grow, right? Unreal Engine 5, Unreal Engine 6, right? Like, our goal is not to say, this is the Passage game engine, but to say, here is what we pull out of the game engine for your experience. You can plug any engine in here, right? Godot is open source, Unreal Engine, Unity, things like that. So it's made to evolve with the evolution of the technology.
So it's basically that I can upload anything to it if I have the ability to do so. So the sky's the limit. And is there like somewhat limit? Like, I mean, if we look at big games like GTA, FIFA, NBA 2K, I mean, they require a lot of data to download it on the hardware, for example.
Yep.
So how much? So how much bandwidth and data can I actually bring into the Passage?
This is a
Network?
beautiful question. So Greg, not too long in the distant past, Greg Osuri from Akash posted a status about the storage utilization of different decentralized cloud architectures, right? So something like IPFS, there's 100x more people contributing storage to the network than there are people using it. So there's so much more speculation, like, oh, I'll contribute. So there's more people trying to earn money by leveraging decentralized storage than there are people who actually want it. What we're going to do is create a greater demand for decentralized storage. So it'll balance out this need between the available storage and the demand for it, right? So what's really cool is, again, this promotes industry, right? It promotes opportunities for these decentralized storage applications to grow. Now, on the other hand, I think there's a very similar phenomenon that's going to happen around decentralized GPU compute, right? In the near future, we have GPU compute coming to Akash network. And I think what we're going to see is, as protocols like Ethereum move towards proof of stake, people aren't just going to chuck those GPUs in the trash. They're going to be looking for a place to allocate that compute power. I think it's going to go to protocols like Akash network, where they're going to be contributing their GPU and we're going to be eating it up, right? Because we're going to be creating a demand through passive streaming for things like GPU. What's so beautiful about all of this, it's a lot, like you said it before, like there's a lot of things here, because Passage is just a connection tool, right? At its heart, it's a connection tool. And what's so incredible about Passage Token is that it's sitting at the nexus of value, right? We are creating a demand for these different opportunities, creating a demand for compute, creating a demand for storage, creating a demand for worlds and content. And Passage just takes a little bit, right? The Passage token, we've created these value funnels so that basically we sustain the network by just taking a little bit of value from each of those propositions, right? Every time somebody has a transaction, every time somebody is making transactions of friends or assets or relationships, like, as you're making these connections across worlds, every time you spend a little bit of money in these worlds, behind the scenes, invisible to the user, there's a little bit of value that is extracted into the Passage network to sustain it and to allow it to grow, so that we can continue to open up more connections and more opportunities. But sitting at kind of like the nexus of these different value funnels is a wild thing, because ultimately, again, our goal is connecting, right? And bringing all these different opportunities together, because a lot of the tools are there, right? We've got storage, we've got compute, and we have Unreal Engine. It's just, we're bringing all these things together.
So the value accrual of the Passage token are interactions in the metaverse, so to say.
Pretty much, yeah. every time anything happens. There's two key areas of value accrual for the passage token, and I should really say it's about serving the network, right? Value accrual, what does that mean? I mean, the idea is we're supporting the network, right? That is the key there, is that we are making sure that we can continue to maintain the validator set that keeps the chain going, right? That we can ensure that is incentivized to continue our, our decentralized, democratized validator set, and also being able to make sure that we have the support to be able to grow again more of these connections, right? To support more open source connections to like open source game engines in the ecosystem, and a lot of things like that. We're being able to make more connections, building and growing this to give more resources to creators and to the communities. And the two ways that we're supporting the network, that we're driving value to the network in that process, is one is through the creation process, right? So people who build a world are responsible for the world, right? If you want to have thousands of people in that world, you're responsible for that hosting. You're responsible for figuring out, how do I make this work, right? And there's going to be a lot of opportunities. There's going to be a lot of areas in the beginning where we're supporting those people to make sure that we can get, the first. Right now, we're targeting 100 worlds. That's where we're really. There's going to be a stage where we basically say these are our Genesis worlds. These is our beta set, and that's it. And then we're going to continue to open the door. But the goal is to make sure that people see the use case, that we're supporting the coolest opportunities in this space to really create and build value. But the creators are responsible for that, right? And we're going to give them tools for managing that. You could have a subscription for your world. You could have ways that people are supporting the world in different ways, right? There's a lot of ways that a lot of tools that we're going to give those world builders, like Discord, right? Like server boosting, that type of thing, to make sure that they're able to, or ticketing, right? Ticketing, subscriptions. There's going to be a lot of different mechanisms for supporting the world and allowing those people, your community, to support the world, whatever it may be. At the same time, if you're just hosting a small world, you may just front that cost, right? But that right there is going to drive value towards Passage and towards the network, right? The creators. And then on the other side, the community and the people operating within these different worlds drive value towards the network through every transaction, through the connections that they're making every time that you have any kind of paid interaction, right? Whether you're buying assets of the marketplace or trading or things like that, that's going to be driving value towards the network as well.
That's so amazing, and what I find so fascinating is actually that that you guys basically built a second world, that you basically combine the gaming world with the real world, and you basically have to put everything what we have in the real world also in the metaverse. You basically have to think about everything from a normal chair in a small apartment to logistics. And what just came into my mind was like a very basic one. So let's stick to the example of a Cosmoverse conference. So I mean, most of the people, they go to conferences for networking. So they are in the networking room, and then there are separate conversations. So let's say you and I are in one room, we have a private conversation, and at the other side of the room there is Sunny and Cryptocito talking to each other. Can we also hear their conversation, or is it possible to have, like, in one virtual room with hundreds of people, a private conversation?
Oh yeah, I mean, here's the goal. The goal is to simulate real life. Anything you can do in real life, you can do in Passage, right? Already, we can bring people into a lot of our current test worlds, and you can see, like, you can walk across the room, and you can make sure you're not heard by just having enough distance, right? As you get further away, it's quieter, right? It actually works. The spatialized audio in Passage is a lot of fun, and it works just like the real world, right? Where we've had tons of people having different conversations in the same room really easily, right? It's not private in the sense that someone could just walk closer and hear you better, right? Or hear you if they couldn't hear you at all. But we're going to be implementing features like whispering, right? Which would be like being able to, like, talk directly to somebody who's either near you or across the room or whatever. Like, if they're your friend, you should be able to, like, whisper across the room and talk directly to them, right? Or chat them in like a text message, things like that within the space. So, there's going to be all sorts of layers of communication here for where that might be appropriate in a collaboration setting, in an event setting. There's a lot of areas where you would want to have that type of privacy or different ways you can communicate, but also like being able to go into a room and have a private conversation there, right? You can have a special room that only people can have access to. If it's an office, you can say like, hey, this is this person's room and no one else can access it unless they have an invite. And that invite could be for a certain time period. Like there's a lot that you can go into in creating the system that's super accessible. It makes it easy to have the experience that you would have in real life, but with more control, with more flexibility, and different kinds of connections that you can create. And it was interesting because you said something about how this is like the real world, or like combining how this is combining gaming with the real world. And what really starts to blow your mind, I mean, just this in and of itself, creating all these connections virtually is really exciting, right? But Passage isn't going to stop here, right? Like the goal for us is not just virtual connections, because for us, we believe that ultimately, as humans, we have an innate and important connection physically, right? Like it's important to be able to be present physically, that this world is important. Part of the reason I love Passage is it makes it easier for me to collaborate and work virtually with my team, which allows me to be present physically with my family, right? I work from home. I've got 3 kids. And so it's one of those things where it's like the virtual world actually helps me to be more present physically, which is a little mind-blowing, right? It's like, oh, like spending some time virtually allows me to do physically what's most important to me. I can work where I want to work. I can spend time with the people I want to spend time with, because my work is not dragging me to a different location. I can work virtually. So virtual collaboration tools are really important for our physical lives. But then beyond that, we want to create 1,000 other connections that drive value to the physical world and pull value from the physical world. Imagine this. Imagine if so again, seeing Passage as just a connection tool, right? Imagine that you're a dedicated Ford or a BMW fan, right? Volkswagen. And you only buy Volkswagen cars, you're hardcore. And across your 10 cars you've owned in your lifetime, you've accrued, 1 million miles, right? You're part of the Million Mile Club. Nobody knows that, nobody cares, right? In Passage, we would work with Volkswagen and we would say, we're going to make sure people can actually own their mileage, right? So that in their on the Passage chain, in their Passage identity, they can make known that they're part of the Million Mile Club, right? Or hey, I've got 100,000 miles tracked so far, right? I'm at this tier. And what that could do is it's taking something from the physical world, tracking it virtually, right? But it's tracking it in a way that they own, right? That belongs to them. It lives as part of their identity in their wallet, and it's something they can control. And then what they can do is when they go to the dealership, they scan their Passage wallet on their phone, right? And they say, oh, to the VIP lounge goes you, right? Because you're part of the Million Mile Club or whatever, right? Like that can be a physical phenomenon that stores value virtually and then gives you value physically in what you're doing. Or you could be a part of like a Volkswagen exclusive community on Passage. You could be part of Volkswagen exclusive events on Passage, get access to like, car shows or things that other people don't get access to because you're, part of the club, right? You've stored your points in your Passage. So the idea is not just to create connections virtually, but to continue to create connections to the physical world to drive value, right? Giving physical businesses ways that they can really reach more people. And again, creating those synergies.
This is actually the most mind-blowing aspect here, and for me also the most scariest one, because I like how you said that the idea is basically to bring to focus more on the physical world. So, for example, that I do not have to travel to hundreds of conferences throughout the year. So this year I was in 3 different continents. I basically missed my whole family life, all of these things. So that when we have this metaverse, that I just stay at home and I go to the conference, and then afterwards I have dinner with my family. Sure thing. But how do you imagine the future? I mean, will it stop there? So will we just use this metaverse to say, we use it to have more, more free time in the real physical world, or will we see at some point the complete shift where we also go on vacation completely voluntarily, let's say to Miami, or I don't know what, with my family, on vacation? So will this happen at some point? How do you imagine this?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it, is it gives people the chance to choose, right? It doesn't decide for people what you have to do, right? You could use the virtual tools as a way to stay home with your family, or you could use it as a tool to travel, right? If I don't have to be at one place for my work, if I can communicate and connect and do meaningful collaboration virtually, it gives me the option of both, right? To travel or not travel, right? In my case, I'm staying here at home, but my work could also move with me. So I have the option to travel if I want to. It just, again, it gives people a choice. And the key with virtual is never to replace the physical, because that's impossible. There's a world in which, we can even use this to incentivize travel, right? You could have states or countries that give points that stamp wallets, or instead of stamping passports, you stamp a wallet, right? And you scan your wallet instead of your passport. Um, and that gives you credentials, right? Like, hey, like, somebody who's visited this country so many times can start to have a reputation, right? That makes it easier for them to move across different countries. Who knows? I mean, the obviously the big picture applications for this are endless, but the idea is it doesn't restrict you to one option or the other. It just gives people options. So some people might use this as an excuse to get absorbed in the virtual. We are trying to show people that this can actually incentivize the opposite. It can incentivize people to live where they're at. Because think about this, you get to choose what you don't want to do, right? If I manage all my finances on my phone and my Passage wallet, if my reputation with my bank, if my loans are all happening through Passage connections, and I connect with my banker who's advising me virtually, then I don't have to go to the bank, right? And that's not a physical task that I love, right? But that means I get to go potentially use that time instead to walk down the street to our mayor here, Charles, who's a great dude, and connect with my community here, right? And so again, it allows you to make choices, right? Do I want to, know who my teller is at the bank, or would I rather know who my mayor is, or spend more time with my kids? Or it's not telling you what you have to do. It just, again, creates options.
That's a very cool way to put it. But yeah, it also seems, I can imagine that it seems very scary to many people, because if also lots of developments continue, if everything of this gets more realistic. Yeah,
Sure.
at some point we will maybe see like kind of a merge, so to say. But you mentioned that we can never ever we will be able to replace the real world. Why is
Yep.
this so?
Well, if you want my frank answer, it's because we're not God. Ultimately, I mean, unless we believe, I just don't think, from my worldview, I don't think that's a real thing. I think it's also evident in our experiences. It's not that we can't get close. There are metaphysical reasons where I believe there are limitations to what we can do as humans, and I think that's a good thing. I think there are some limitations that are good, and some limitations we should be pushing the boundaries of, right? What we're capable of as a species, as humans. Um, but ultimately, I think there is something inherently important about shaking somebody's hand, about giving somebody a hug. I don't think everything that can be encapsulated about a human happens in kind of the immediate, the things that we perceive even as humans, right? Synapses and electrons, like, we're more than that. We're more than the sum of our parts, right? So even if you could get to the point where, Neuralink, right, you're tapping into people's brains, I don't think that's enough. I don't think you've gone far enough at that point, because I think we're more than that, right? For anybody who has spiritual beliefs, who believes that we don't live simply in a materialistic world, that we're more than just deterministic atoms falling through space. We have to believe that we can't necessarily, if that's true, right? If there are things that we don't have physical access to that make up our experience, that make up a handshake or eye contact, right? If there's a spiritual nature to that, if we're more than just the material, then you can't be encapsulated in a physical recreation like the metaverse, right? Because what the metaverse is again, it's it's these physical experiences, right? It's empirical, right? It's what you see, it's what you hear, it's what you touch. You can manipulate all those things. You can make someone think they're touching something that they aren't, right? You can manipulate the nerves and their muscles and things like that. But ultimately, we're more than that, right? So I think it's really important to understand that. And again, that's a worldview assumption, right? Like that's something I believe. I don't look at what we're doing and assume, oh, we'll never get to a place where we could recreate reality. It's like, no, I don't have to look at what we're doing. Frankly, that's something I believe from the outset. That's a presupposition of my worldview. But that said, that does inform our goals. That informs kind of like what we're striving towards. And I think it's really important to strive towards balance, right? Where the virtual, the things that we create as humans are important, but we also have to keep looking back to our roots as a race in the grass, in the dirt, right? And the things that were here before us. And make sure that we're connected, not just with what we've produced, but with, again, what's been here before us and the human kind of more deeply rooted connections, seeing people face to face, being able to give somebody a hug, all those things.
Yeah, that's a very nice way to look at it. But yeah, I totally agree with that. But yeah, that's actually what the discussion around the metaverse is all about. But I remember 2021, this is where the metaverse really became a topic to talk about also in mainstream media. So actually, where are we? Because we saw Facebook rebranding to Meta, and then we heard nothing again. But we saw some DJs playing concerts in the metaverse. So where are we as of now? So from a development stage in regards of the metaverse.
Yeah, that's a great question. Frankly, I think guys like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook are just out of touch. I don't think they're actually going to create something revolutionary. I mean, these are the people who invested in Oculus, which is it's a great thing, but hasn't had any traction yet, right? They're investing in it is highly speculative, right? It's not something that's been proven. So we'll see, right? We'll see how far that goes and how much they're really in touch with what people want, right? I think Facebook as a platform is becoming more relevant. And I think we need some new voices, some new perspectives in this whole conversation of what do people really want from a virtual experience, right? I can tell you, I don't want the Baby Ray's dude over here. He's like this. I don't want this guy manipulating my virtual experience, right? Like, there's got to be trust, and that's why I think there is no metaverse outside of decentralized technology, because I think a lot of people don't trust the social media giants. They don't trust the big corporations to give them a safe and unbiased experience, right? To really have control. There's always this fear that somewhere in the terms and conditions, you've bartered your firstborn child or your soul to this platform. And, so it needs to be something where the people can decide what they want through decentralized protocols and things like that. So looking at, man, it's so interesting. And I hate to bust anyone's chops in this process, but when it comes to what's happening now, there's two problems that we're looking at in current metaverse applications. There's the narrow metaverse and there's the isolated metaverse, right? On the narrow side, too many of these are focused on gamers, right? You just look at some of these metaverses and you're like, oh yeah, this is made for gamers. Like even the graphics imply that the only people who ever want to get in on this virtual world are people who are totally okay living as a Nintendo Wii character for the rest of their life, right? I'm totally cool being 64 pixels as a Minecraft character, right? And a lot of people don't want to live life as an avatar. And I would say, especially an avatar that doesn't give you the full expression of kind of the unique detail and realism of me as a person. I don't think it works for even a broad spectrum of gamers even, but obviously going beyond that to professional areas for entertainment and events, media, those types of things. There's a huge swath of applications that are not being considered and audiences that aren't being considered. That's the narrow metaverse, right? Decentraland, Sandbox, I think they struggle with these things. In addition to the isolated metaverse, where it's all walled gardens, right? You have the big ones like Sandbox and Decentraland, where it's questionable, cool, maybe they're built around Ethereum. And so there's some level of relationship to other tokens that are built on Ethereum, whether or not that's scalable or workable. If layer twos are going to be our, godsend for the Ethereum network, there are things happening there, but there isn't built-in interoperability, right? Sandbox is sandbox, right? If you want to build in the sandbox metaverse, you're building a sandbox world that is so distinctly sandbox, it's so isolated, right? And it's users who are trying to cobble together, I'm going to connect my sandbox world to my Decentraland world or whatever, and it's like it's not built into the system for them to be connected. Passage, the goal is to solve both those problems. That it wouldn't be narrow. You can go Minecraft graphics if you want. You can also go super realistic or super minimalistic, right? The goal is any range, right? People should be able to choose how they're what the design style preference is, what the format is, whatever, giving people options and modularity. So that's keeping it from being narrow and focused on one audience. And then on the isolated side, we're trying to build in connection from the beginning, right? Obviously, that just goes hand in hand with IBC and the whole idea of inter-blockchain communication. But that's the goal, right? Is those two problems. I think so many platforms are struggling with that. The other big thing a lot of platforms are struggling with right now is accessibility, because the people who are smart enough to build in Web3 are struggling to create adoption in the mainstream. And even people who have easy tools like fiat on-ramps and things like that are really struggling because they're still advertising to a crypto audience. They're not yet they're not yet suited to attract the interests of the mainstream. It's not just about making it accessible, practically speaking. It's actually about what do they want. And so many Web3 businesses are out of touch with what the mainstream wants. So a really big part of being able to showcase that is really going to be again kind of our experience in the media and entertainment space. It's working with content creators, it's working with businesses who have an established mainstream audience to show people how it's done and to kind of create that initial insurgence of people into this space. So that's kind of my diagnosis.
Nice. Yeah, and yeah, I totally agree with that. And I just also saw a very beautiful comment in the comment section that basically also reflected this. But before we wrap this interview up and before we let some community questions up to the stage. So, guys, if you have any questions, please comment in the section below. We can pick up 2 questions. But before we move towards this, would be like super cool to understand what now. So again, you had a super smooth launch today. What now? What can we expect? What can we do now?
Yeah, we've got a lot up our sleeves right now, guys. There's a lot that's happening behind the scenes, for one, in terms of all the things going on with the chain. The next big events for Passage are going to be the public launch, which we expect to happen later this year. So there's going to be a period of time where there's no inflation. We're going to be working behind the scenes on things like moving the Passage marketplace to the Passage chain, which is really exciting for us because that's going to kind of give people visibility into the volume and how people are already engaging with the Passage worlds like Strangeclan. We've done something like 5 million in volume on the Strangeclan collection alone for the Passage marketplace. And we have a number of projects, collections that are going to be lined up for release on the Passage marketplace, like tickets for our events in Blockhouse, amongst other things. There's really cool things coming up. And so having the marketplace on the Passage chain is going to be a big part of giving people visibility into what is Passage, what's it doing, right? What kind of value is it creating? What kind of volume is it driving? What are people doing, and what is the activity on Passage? So we're really excited about that. Later on in the year, we're going to have the public launch. There's a lot of big things coming out around the time of the public launch. We've got some big news to share. We've really been growing our team. It's been a big part of our development, is being able to kind of create, because Passage is so big and there's so many areas that this connects with. We're doing 2 things. We're creating a lot of partnerships with teams who are creating in these different spaces. Teams who are building in the gaming space, whether decentralized or mainstream. People who are building in the event space, like Decentralized, the EDM festival, Nostalgia, the hip hop martial arts festival, and entertainment space. We have some really cool things coming up. So I think people will start to see a little bit of a glimpse into what's been happening, what's been building, and what the initial lineup of worlds is going to look like around the time of the public launch. It's going to be a lot of fun things for that.
And I guess we can expect some showcases at Cosmoverse in a month, actually, already.
So soon. I love it. I'm stoked.
Yeah, so your team is also coming, I guess, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
We'll have Errol, and we'll have our so Errol is our he's chief marketing officer. A lot of people are probably familiar with him. He's been running the podcast, as well as our chief technology officer Mike, who a lot of people don't know as well. But it'd be a really great time to like connect with the projects in the Cosmos space and be able to kind of connect on different levels from the technical to just kind of what's happening with the product.
Yeah, so stoked about this. Actually, we have one community question, but this community question emerged on Twitter. It was, how will land be purchased or unlocked by a player? Achievements in the Strangeclan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the cool thing about Strangeclan, there's going to be this is kind of our first experiment and our first demonstration of what's possible in this type of space. I don't think there is a decentralized game that's kind of been done at a AAA level to full quality that's received the attention of a mainstream game, right? We have things like Axie Infinity that kind of had a lifespan to them in terms of how effective they could be and the limitations of inflation as a rewards mechanism, right? And what do these cycles look like? Is something fun to play? So a lot of that stuff is evolving around Strangeclan. What does ownership mean? How does ownership change trading dynamics, incentivization in the game? But for purchasing the land, there's going to be some different options. There's going to be an advantage to holding the Genesis NFTs. In purchasing land, they're going to get first access. And it'll probably be, we've talked about things like land being unlocked in stages. So I'll kind of have a set amount at the beginning, but the percentages of it will be opened up as new areas open up and things like that. This is something that's still really, really early in the kind of like first installment of Strangeclan, but everyone will get kind of a taste of that. We have a demo that's coming out either end of this year or beginning of next year, right before around the time that we're launching the prologue for Strangeclan. So people will begin to get a taste for what that whole ecosystem is going to be like, what ownership and the value propositions will look like, having that really cool combination of a meaningful game with meaningful storytelling that's fun for its own sake, but also an open marketplace. So
Nice. Yeah. That sounds super, super promising. And yeah, also super keen to see what will happen in the next couple of weeks from now. So there's a lot, yeah, to look forward to. But yeah, I think we reached a very good time. We are slightly below an hour. I think that's the perfect time. So Lex, thank you so much for being on the show on this important day. I know I can imagine that it was a very busy day for you so far, and it will be a busy day in the next couple of hours as well. So yeah, thank you for being on. We discussed some things, so we will also link these documents that we mentioned in the description below as soon as this live stream is over. So again, thank you so much for joining, and yeah, hope to see you in Medellin.
oh, it's my pleasure.